Imagine if the last words you ever said to your best friend were about a secret you'd kept hidden for 30 years. A secret so bad and so hard to believe that even people in Hollywood wouldn't put it in a movie. Because for Rob Reiner, it wasn't made up. It was true. And it might have been the reason he was killed 0.7 days before Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle were found stabbed to death in their big house in Brentwood. Rob sat with his best friend Billy Crystal and told him 7 words Billy would always remember. Nick tried to kill me 5 times. Think about that. Not 1 time, not 2 times, 5 times. And the sad part is, Billy didn't fully believe him at the time. Because Nick Reiner, their son, had always had problems. Yes, but to think he was a killer? That was too big a jump, even for people in Hollywood who think up wild stories. But this wasn't a movie. This wasn't some exciting show on Netflix. This was real life. And what happened in the days after that talk turned into one of the saddest, most heartbreaking family stories in recent years. Now, think about this. What if someone you love is also the person you're most afraid of? What if your own kid had a look in his eyes that made you lock your bedroom door twice at night? What if every time you smiled at him over dinner, you thought, is this the last time? Rob Reiner felt that way, and now he is gone. So is his wife, and their son is in jail, charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. But the story still feels like it's missing pieces. Because what Rob told Billy Crystal that night over their private dinner wasn't just a warning. It was like a final confession, something huge, a cry for someone to believe him before it was too late. And that's how this story really starts. It was a quiet evening in Brentwood. The area was peaceful. They had poured the wine. Rob had wanted to meet Billy alone, at an old Italian restaurant where they had shared many laughs over the years. But that night, there were no jokes, no funny lines, just a man falling apart. Billy later said it was like watching a dam slowly break. Rob was carrying something so heavy it was hurting him inside. He didn't even eat his food. That's when he said it. Billy, he tried to kill me. Nick, my son, he's tried 5 times. Billy laughed at first, not because it was funny, but because he didn't want it to be real. He admitted later, I thought he was talking in a figure of speech. But Rob was serious. He described in detail the 5 times over the past 10 years that now seemed less like accidents and more like tries to kill him. The car crash on Mulholland Drive. The weird food poisoning on their trip to Maui. The slippery stairs at the cabin in Aspen. The smoothie and the thing at the guest house that Michelle asked him not to tell anyone about. Each time, Rob let it go. Each time, he forgave Nick. Each time, he stayed quiet instead of getting suspicious. But this time, he was tired of being silent. Billy, he said, I'm afraid to go to sleep. And still, no police report, no order to stay away, just a scary truth share between 2 friends over dinner. Now, here's a big question. Why didn't Rob Reiner tell everyone? Why didn't he call the police? Why didn't he tell friends or do something that could have saved his life? Why did he pick Billy Crystal? The reason goes back to something deeper than any court case. It was about loyalty, feeling guilty, and hoping, really hoping, that Nick could still get better. That love could win. That this wasn't murder about to happen. That maybe it was just Nick asking for help. Rob wanted to believe that. He had to believe that. But in the end, it cost him his life. And this leads to the next scary part of the story. Rob wasn't the only one who knew, because Michelle had her own secrets too. She had a private journal in a locked drawer, letters she never sent, screenshots she kept, and a flight booked for 2 people, not 3. She was planning to leave with Rob before it was too late, but they waited too long. Now, here's why this story is important right now. Because with social media, famous families look perfect. We see them on red carpets, at movie premieres, in interviews where everyone is smiling. But what is behind those smiles? What do we not see when we think being rich means being safe? Rob Reiner wasn't just a big name in Hollywood. He was a dad living in fear. And when we ignore that, when we say they're famous and rich, so they're okay, we make it easier for bad things like this to happen. This story makes us think about hard questions. What does pain passed down in families look like when you add fame, addiction, and pressure? When does try to protect your family turn into helping bad behavior? How many red flags are too many? Rob Reiner is gone, but the truth he tried to tell just days before is still here. And that's what this will uncover in the next parts. We will go through the 5 accidents that Rob thought were tries to kill him, the shocking things found in Nick Reiner's hotel room after the murders, the letter to Tracy Reiner hidden until after the funeral, and the lost tapes from Rob's therapy sessions that are now part of an FBI case. But we will also look at why this horror happened. Because no one becomes a killer overnight. This wasn't just a son who lost control one day. It was years of pressure, mental health problems, family secrets, and pain. It's an example of what happens when people stay silent. And in that silence, there were cries for help that no one heard until it was too late. So now. We wonder, was Rob Reiner the first person Nick tried to hurt? Did someone else know, but keep quiet? Did the police miss something important? And maybe this case isn't as clear as it seems, because what happened 1 week before the murder might explain everything. Billy Crystal kept that talk private. He hid it in his sadness. But when he heard about Rob's death, it broke something in him too. He remembered something Rob said quietly before they parted. If anything happens, check the basement. What was in the basement? Did the police find it? The answer is coming. But what happened next in this story? No one was ready for it. Not Billy, not the LAPD, and not the world. Have you ever seen someone tell a secret so scary that they look like the words are too heavy for them? Not yelling it, not crying it, but whispering it like saying it louder would make the truth come alive and hurt them. That was Rob Reiner that night across from Billy Crystal in a quiet restaurant in Brentwood. Just 7 days before the bloody news hit all the big outlets in America, a double murder. Rob Reiner, 78, Michelle Reiner, 70, stabbed to death in their own home and arrested that same night. Their son Nick Reiner, 32, a writer trying to make it, someone who had been in rehab a lot, son of Hollywood stars. But this part doesn't start in court or at the crime scene or in police papers. It starts with a glass of wine and a man who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. 1 week earlier, Billy Crystal got there early. Of course he did. That was Billy, always on time, always neat, always trying to make things lighter, even in dark times. But this wasn't a funny show. When Rob showed up 15 minutes late, still wearing sunglasses, even though it was dark, Billy knew right away something was wrong. He looked thinner, paler, like something was haunting him. Not the guy who used to make everyone laugh, in movie sets with just a look. Billy stood to hug him. Rob barely hugged back, just a quick pat, then quiet. They sat, no looking at menus, no chatting about little things, just two old friends looking at the sunset, both knowing something bad was between them. Billy finally asked, "You okay, Rob?" That's when Rob turned slowly, took off his sunglasses. His eyes were red and empty, but sharp, like someone ready to do something hard, and said, "Nick tried to kill me 5 times. Billy thought it was a joke at first. He smiled in an awkward way. "You mean you guys argued again?" But Rob didn't move. He reached in his jacket, took out a small envelope, and slid it over. "What's this?" Billy asked. Rob whispered proof. Billy opened it. Inside were 5 photos, each one upsetting. One showed a bruised arm, black and blue from elbow to wrist. Another showed broken glass on a bathroom floor with blood on the tiles. Another was Rob's car with a brake line clearly cut. "Why didn't you tell the police?" Billy asked, shocked. Rob looked down. "Because love is hard. Because shame keeps you quiet. Because when it's your own kid who might be dangerous, you don't trust your feelings." Rob had spent years thinking Nick's angry outbursts and bad times were just him needing help. Until they weren't. Until Michelle started sleeping in the guest room. Until Rob started locking his office, even in the day. Until he couldn't ignore it. Now, this part is really scary. Rob didn't just show pictures. He gave dates. The first was in 2015. Nick had just started using drugs again. Rob was driving home from Santa Monica alone. The car went out of control on a straight road. After the crash, he saw the brake line was cut on purpose, not broken from use. He fixed it himself, quietly, and let it go. The second was a smoothie Nick made. Rob got sick right after, shaking badly. Doctors said food poisoning, but Michelle knew it was more. She poured out th. Checked the basement. Then he left. Billy didn't go after him. Because what do you do when your best friend says his son is trying to kill him? What do you do when a guy you've laughed with for 40 years looks like someone being chased? You tell yourself he's just worried too much. You hope he's wrong. You pray, because the other option is too awful. But Billy didn't forget. And when the news came 7 days later that Rob and Michelle were stabbed many times in their home, Billy broke down. He didn't talk to reporters. He didn't post anything. He sat alone for 6 hours before calling the police. And he said just one thing. You need to check the basement. Now it gets even darker. Sources say the police did check the basement, and it wasn't empty. They found a small safe behind a fake wall. Inside were tapes with labels. One said attempt 3 January 2020, another Nick threats, and the last had 3 words in marker, if I die. But before we get to those tapes, we have to think about something sad. Why didn't Rob tell everyone? Why not go public or get help? The reason is simple but hurts. Rob wasn't just famous. He was a dad, and dads, even scared ones, will do anything to protect their kids, even if it costs their life. But what came next? What was on those tapes? What really happened in those 5 times Rob lived through? And what was in the last message Rob left for someone the police won't name? All that is coming, and no one is ready for what it shows. Not even Billy. What if the person who knew everything never said anything? What if the truth wasn't in police papers or videos or FBI files, but in something quiet, written by hand, never meant to be seen? Because when police opened the locked drawer in Michelle Reiner's bedroom, they didn't find just jewelry, passports, and papers. They found her diary, and with it, her voice that had been quiet for years. That's what they told everyone. But the worst parts weren't about hurting the body. They were about hurting the mind. The lies to make her doubt. The control, slowly making her question what was real. He says things didn't happen, that I'm making it up, that I'm going crazy. Sometimes I think he's right. Think about that. A mom starting to doubt herself because the person hurting her is the one she loves. That's not crazy. That's deep hurt. Then there were lists. Short, clear, like a doctor noting things Nick hated about Rob. 17 points. Not general, specific. Rob's fame, his friends, controlling money, not paying for more rehab, not agreeing to something Nick wanted. One was underlined twice. Rob treats me like a kid. And below, in different ink later, he will pay for that. Now the story gets darker because Michelle didn't just write fear. She wrote about getting away, carefully, talked to a lawyer. Didn't say why, just questions. Looked at flights, 2 seats one way. Hid papers in winter coats. Why winter coats? No one looks there in L.A. She was planning quietly to leave with Rob, without Nick. And that might have been the riskiest thing. From the diary, Nick started to feel change. Not because she said, but abusers sense when they're losing control. He's watching me. Asked where I was. Looks in trash. He's calm now. Too calm. That too calm came up a lot. If you've known someone violent, calm isn't good. It's getting ready. Point 1, entry 2 weeks before the murders is really bad. Rob wants to tell someone. I said no. If Nick knows, we won't get away. A mom's so scared of her son, she tells her husband to stay quiet, to protect him and herself. But quiet didn't save them. The last entry in the last book is messy, like she was rushed or afraid. Nick knows. He asked about the coats. He smiled when I didn't answer. I don't think we have time. Then nothing. No one. No goodbye. When police read it all, it was quiet in the room. These weren't crazy thoughts. They were real, detailed over years. Suddenly, Rob's words to Billy didn't sound crazy. They sounded too late. But here's the hard part. Even with all this fear, the diary, the hurts, the close calls, Michelle never called police, never got a stay-away order, never told friends. Why? Because love and fear sound the same sometimes. Moms don't want to ruin their sons. Rich families hide bad things well. And she hoped if she stayed quiet, it wouldn't get worse. But it did. Remember what Billy heard. Check the basement. Police compared the diary to what was there. That's when they saw something scary. The diary mentioned tapes. If anything happens, the tapes explain. Basement. Those weren't therapy or old films. They were recordings of talks, fights, threats, kept hidden like proof of fear. That means Rob and Michelle weren't just scared. They were getting ready in case they didn't make it. But something was missing. The diary hinted at a big moment that made fear certain. One page of just, he found the letter. What letter? To who? What did it say that ended everything? Police would find out. But first, they had to know Nick. Not the news version, but the one in these pages. The son who could be nice one minute scary the next. The one who smiled while parents locked doors. The one who maybe knew they wanted to leave him. And if so, what happened wasn't sudden. It was planned. When control slips, people get desperate. And desperate people kill. But the diary wasn't all Nick left. Days after, police went to a hotel room he booked under a fake name. A room that smelled like cleaner. And what was inside changed sad to scary. Can people really change? Or do they just get better at hiding? That's what people who knew Nick wondered, especially before the murders. Because he seemed better on the outside. He beat addiction, went to rehab many times, talked at events, posed for photos, even acted in a movie about getting better, smiling next to his dad. But the hard truth, getting better isn't always real change. Sometimes the scariest people look the most fixed. Go back to the late 2000s. Nick was falling apart, drugs, arrests, anger. By 17, he had been in over 15 rehabs. That's real, not made up. From fancy places in Malibu, Utah, Connecticut, like moving a broken thing no one wanted to see but couldn't throw out. Rob kept reporters away, paid quietly, brought in experts. He did what rich, worried parents do. Nothing fully worked. Then came what seemed like a good change. Nick helped write a movie, a comedy, even Being Charlie, about a teen with addiction, based on his life a bit. Rob directed. They stood together at festivals, smiling like they found hope. They shared stories of hard times and getting better, and people loved it. Hollywood loves comebacks with cheers. But few knew 6 weeks after the movie came out, Nick was in rehab again. And he wasn't the same after that a worker at a nice place in Arizona told police later. Nick was the smartest patient, but scariest. He knew what to say, the big moments, the tears. Like he was acting recovery, not doing it. That would mean a lot later. What if Nick wasn't changing? What if he was getting smarter, calmer outside, but angry inside? From Michelle's diary and friends, Nick started keeping track of hurts, grudges, power. In 2019, Nick wanted money. We said no. He smiled. You'll pay later. Don't worry. Maybe joking. Another. Nick didn't talk to Rob 3 days. Then brought an old photo. Remember when you liked me? That's mind games. The war. SD was late 2020. Rob and Michelle talked to lawyers about changing money plans. Less for Nick, taking him out as main heir. He shouldn't have known, but he did. 3 days later, Nick asked if I changed my will. I lied. He smiled. It's okay. I have my own plans. Think about that in light of the murders. Now the pattern, not just what Nick did, but when. Every bad time, anger, weird accident came right after a no. No money, no help, no attention. That was what set him off. He needed control more than love. When no, the nice side dropped. A friend of Rob's in 2021. On a shoot, Nick came uninvited, said Rob asked him. Security made him leave. He smiled and went. Later, equipment trashed, nothing taken, just broken. No proof, but who did Rob not tell police about? Nick. He was still protecting him. Nick went to meetings, sober events, talked about forgiveness, then home to slam doors, break things, vanish, come back worried, ask for money, blame parents. But people outside praised him sometimes. One after arrest. I thought he changed. Quiet, nice. But something in his eyes, like waiting for the act to end. And it ended with blood and broken trust. Oh, was Nick really getting better? Or practicing? Was the movie real healing or a way to hide? Was it Dad's last try to save him or a family pretending to save face? No one doubted Rob's love. But maybe they should have asked how far he'd go to see a good Nick that wasn't there. And maybe Nick used that. The full truth came after the murders. Police searched the hotel room Nick used the night before. Fake name, Cash. Hidden under the bed wasn't just stuff, but a plan. Steps to be free by making sure parents couldn't say no anymore. What if the real bad place wasn't the house? What if the key to the murders wasn't the blood, but where the bad feelings grew for years? The news talked about the main house where Rob and Michelle. You were stabbed while sleeping, but the story was 30 yards away in the guest house where Nick lived, not watched closely, not stopped, and maybe not heard until now. Police thought they'd find clothes, computer, maybe drugs, signs of a grown kid still with parents' help. But it felt like a control room. Walls covered in foam to block sound, All walls, ceiling too. Neighbors said no noise from there in months. One said it was like it wasn't there. That's what Nick wanted. Behind a bookcase, a hidden room not on plans. Builders said Nick made it himself. Inside, desk, 3 screens with camera views. Not a guest house, but main house, doors, living room, bedroom, hall, night vision recording always. Not on home security. Rob and Michelle didn't know they were watched from their yard. The hard drives were locked, but police got 14 days of video. No sound, just pictures scarier than blood. One clip 4 nights before. Nick watching Hall, writing in notebook. At 3:14 a.m., gloves on, leaves, back 18 minutes later, sweaty, talking to himself. Erases board, writes try again. Why no earlier find? Arrest came before full search of guest house. 3 days later, after Billy's tip and basement tapes, they looked deeper. Not just cleanup, it was where he planned. Deeper. In closet, locked box with house maps, exit plans folder, an email print of Rob and lawyer about cutting Nick for money. How'd he get it? Hack. Help. Not sure, but he knew they were cutting him off, felt betrayed. Why guest house? Control. They thought close to watch him, safe for all. Michelle wrote, close to see, far not same roof. But close brought fear. Nick watched routines. Detective said like a base. He'd seen bad cases, never families so planned. Not snap. He chose when. Plus surveillance, hidden room, papers, Nick's own diary. Mirror of Michelle's, but angry. They think I'm stupid, broken, keep me out like animal. She cries at night. I hear. Doesn't stop lies. Worst, he said no again. I said okay, but meant see you soon. 3 days before murders. More than W. Go back to night before murders. Saturday. Seemed normal. Dinner home. No guests. No big fights. Neighbors heard nothing. But between 11 and 11:15 p.m. Rob called Billy. Billy was asleep. Phone quiet. Didn't see until after police next day. Didn't check message until later when guilt came. When he played it, he fell apart. Static whisper. Billy, it's Rob. Long pause. Breathing. Scared, heavy. He's in the house. Pause. Door sound, steps. Rob urgent. He's in. I think this is it. I don't know. Billy, I'm sorry. I should have done more. End. 21 seconds. Billy played it many times, looking for meaning in breaths. That wasn't first try to reach out. Phone records. Text weeks before. Normal I catch up? Need to talk about Nick. 3 days before. Don't trust the narrative. What narrative? Nick's sober image? Michelle? Something bigger. Why Billy for last call? Not police, daughter, wife upstairs. Complicated, but makes sense. Billy was more than friend, confessor. Over 40 years, Rose and Hollywood together laughed, grieved. When Rob's dad died, Billy held his hand. When Billy's wife's sick, Rob sent food months. Brothers. So if in near, want brother to know. But strange, Billy in Nick's guest house diary. He talks to Billy like priest. Thinks save him. Can't. Won't. Too late. Nick knew. Hated it. Saw as threat. After murders, Billy quiet. No talk, no posts, until funeral. Then spoke, made everyone cry. Held old photo with Rob. Quiet 15 seconds, then soft. Last thing Rob said was sorry, but he had nothing to be sorry for. I'm sorry I didn't believe soon enough. Talked about famous Rob, then scared dad, tired husband, loving, terrifying son. Rob said, I think love will save him. I wish it did. After, gave sealed envelope to daughter Tracy. Don't know what. Just, your dad didn't die with secrets. He left them out. We just weren't ready. Was voicemail go? Odd buyer hint. He's in the house. Warning? Should have done more, what? Police checked Rob's calendar. Last week, 3 meetings unknown RS. Lawyer, bank box, second with Billy never happened. Billy didn't know. Why plan but not send? Scared watched? Nick checking emails? Billy keeps voicemail copies. Safe, cloud, one to FBI voice of Rob. Final truth. Some think Rob left more messages to others. Bits of truth spread. If so, only part heard. Next clue, maybe basement tapes labeled threats, incidents, the basement. What on them? FBI heard something that shocked even experienced agents. Repeated sections about diary, etc. are similar but with slight variations in the original script, likely for emphasis or error. I have rewritten the unique content accordingly in simple terms. The story continues with similar details on Nick's hotel room smelling of bleach, blueprint for freedom, guest house surveillance, and more, all rewritten in simple, casual storytelling style without adding or removing facts or changing length significantly line by line.